What is up, everybody? Escape211 here. Happy New Year to you all. It is 2021, and to start the year, we are going to be doing a comparison video. The Pulse Cannon 8s versus the Carbine 8s. This is what I've wanted to do for a little bit, and I got some criteria to base this off of, so we want to get into it. Both of mine are about the same level, so here we go. The first category we're going to do is availability. So how easy can you get these weapons? Now, the Pulse Cannon 8 will come up sooner in the progress path. It's about 11,000 XP. That's right after Guardian, so it's about mid-level in the progress path. Now, there's a couple weapons right before the Pulse Cannon that may overshadow it, like the Javelin 6 or the Missile Rack 8, but this is a decent weapon, and a lot of people put it on Guardian if they want that sustained damage, because this is really the best sustained damage that you have at this point in the game. It also only costs 72,500 credits to get, so it's not too hard to grind for at this point. But if we move a little further down the progress path, we will find the Carbine 8s, just a little bit past Ares here. This is a little over 25,000 XP to get, which is a decent amount, but it's also the first prototype weapon that you will see, the first prototype period, so it has some significance. But to unlock this one, it is a whopping 8,275 A coins, which is pretty darn significant. That's a lot for anybody, and a lot of the prototypes are around the same level of expense. So does that mean the Pulse Cannon is better? Maybe not necessarily. The Pulse Cannon is definitely good and decent as soon as you get it, but to even get it at the same level as the Carbine 8s for when you first get them, you're going to have to do some upgrading. Remember, the Pulse Cannon 8 is starting at 3 stars as a rare weapon, and the Carbine 8s start at 5 stars as a prototype. So not only are you going to need to purchase that Pulse Cannon 8, you also need to upgrade it 2 more stars. So aside from that 72,500 credits you spend to get it, you're also going to spend over 390,000 credits, and then for the star rank upgrades, 2,350 A coins. Now, of course, that's less A coins than when you had to spend with the Carbine 8s, but significantly more in the credits area, almost 500,000. So it's getting pretty close in terms of amount of resources where you'd spend. So then people will say, which do you think is better? To me, I think that's a pretty close race, but I also associate more grinding typically with A coins, especially that it's the premium currency and that it holds a higher value. And with premium currency, you also have to consider most of the higher end stuff you want, like other prototype weapons and things, are also going to cost that premium currency. So the more you can save in that category is better, in my opinion. I also appreciate that the Pulse Cannon is a weapon you can really grow into. So for the fact of its accessibility, I would say that the Pulse Cannon slightly edges out in this round. The next category we're going to look at is the rank up ability. Now, the Pulse Cannon 8 has one called Hit Cone in its arsenal. And if you've heard of Hit Cone in other games, that is simply the spread of bullets as you shoot. You always want a tighter hit cone. If you can have it, that means your bullets will spread out less the longer distance, and it just helps you retain accuracy. If we move over to the Carbine 8s, they do not have an ability. Now, does this mean the Pulse Cannon 8s automatically win? Again, not necessarily, because if we scroll down, we will see that the accuracy on the Carbine 8s is medium already. The Pulse Cannon 8s have a low accuracy rating on them. So even though the hit cone helps to give them better accuracy, they still overall have less accuracy than the Carbine 8s. So even though the Pulse Cannon 8s have the hit cone ability, it still means that their accuracy is lower than the Carbine 8s. So the ability isn't really helping them. So in this category, I have to favor on the side of the Carbine 8s. They're just more accurate. Now, the last category we want to look at is damage, and this one is a big one, and usually the deciding factor for what people do for their loadouts. So we want to have even footing. Again, we're at rank 5, level 4 for both of these weapons. And right away, if we look at the damage per shot, the second item in that list, we'll see that the Carbine 8s do 415 per shot, and the Pulse Cannon 8s only do 280 per shot. So again, does this mean that the Carbine 8s win the damage category? Not necessarily. There are a lot of other factors we look at for the damage category. For example, we can see that the Carbine 8s do less damage per magazine than the Pulse Cannon 8s, about 5,000 less damage. That's a decent chunk in that category. And what's even more interesting with this specific stat is that dual Pulse Cannon 8s will do 50,400 damage, but a Carbine 8 and a Carbine 10 build together, which is common at 18 energy, actually only does 48,700 damage, so a little bit less than dual pulse cannon 8s, which is only 16 energy. That's crazy. That means that per magazine, pulse cannon 8s can do the same as an 18 energy based sustained damage build from 2 prototype weapons. That's really crazy. But again, this doesn't necessarily mean that it wins the damage category. There's a lot of factors that go into how we decide what the damage is, and ultimately it lands down to time to kill. This is a common thing that we use in these kind of games to figure out what actually kills faster and does more damage. Now, even though the Pulse Cannon 8 does more damage per clip, it takes a little longer to expound that clip, about 2 seconds longer. But it also reloads about a second faster. So what does that all mean for the time to kill? Well, when you factor all that in, and if you were to do more sustained damage for longer than one clip, the Pulse Cannon 8 is going to win out, just because it's going to do more damage in the long run. So its overall time to kill in that sense, or overall long-term damage, is going to be better. But the other thing that we want to think about, especially with regard to all this stuff, is that the Pulse Cannon 8s have a much larger optimal range, twice as much. So not only are we looking at these different factors, all of the factors, all the stats that we see in our stats when we go to the actual weapon in our inventory are based around optimal damage. That means you're only talking about 30 meters for carbines versus that 60 meters for the Pulse Cannon 8s. So overall, the damage not only is better per clip, it's also more realistic to look at the damage numbers that we have available to us in-game surrounding it based on the optimal damage. And you're going to be in optimal range for damage a lot more frequently with the Pulse Cannon 8s than you will with the Carbine 8s. So even though the per shot damage for the Carbine 8 is higher, when we look at the overall magazine damage, its overall time to kill, as well as how much easier it is to get in the optimal range, it's really the Pulse Cannon that is better in the damage category and overall wins the comparison between these two. So that is the comparison video, you guys, and I hope you found it helpful. This is in no way to say that the carbines, of course, are bad. I actually think they're a great weapon and definitely worth being top end, but you're sacrificing a little bit of that damage for having that flexibility at all ranges and then having good damage up close at 30 meters. But the Pulse Cannons, I think when it comes to the Pulse Cannon 8 versus a Carbine 8, it wins out. When you get into higher end builds and you want more sustained damage, you're going to obviously reach for the higher class carbines than you will the Pulse Cannon more. But just between these two, since they're so common, it was the way to go, I think, for looking at these. But if you guys disagree or you have other things that you think should be factored in or other thoughts, feel free to comment below, and we will see you out there in the new year on the battlefield.